So a lot of people that are sitting there saying today that they're not impacted by a government shutdown are not actually looking at the fact that could potentially impact individuals down the road.
Welcome, friends, to Investing in Faith, where faith meets finance in the most practical ways. The show is designed to bring you certainty during uncertain times. I'm Bradford Hancock, joined with certified financial planner Michael Wallin. Michael serves financial, tax, and estate clients across the nation, bringing clarity through biblical principles. After this episode, go to investedinfaith.com to connect and learn more. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Bradford, good to be here.
So what is certain in these uncertain times?
That's a great question. One of the things that's probably on many people's mind right now is the government shutdown. Everyone has an opinion about it. For a lot of individuals out there, the opinion has been, well, the government shut down, but I really haven't been impacted. No. And so is it really something that big? And so let's kind of break that down a little bit. Let's unpack the government shutdown and where would that come into play?
Okay.
So if individuals are sitting there and they're talking about the government being shut down and currently they're not needing services, let's just say it's the Social Security office or the post office, and post office is still up and running today. The mail is still going out. So people really aren't being impacted with day-to-day activities. But let's say it was Social Security, and maybe Social Security, some of the employees are being furloughed right now and they're not there. So if we're looking at that, it might not be an impact. They may not feel that disengagement by not having an employee there. Now, if you just turned 65 and you need to get your Medicare insurance started, or you may, be at a point where you're needing to take Social Security benefit, then that might impact you. But right now, a lot of people aren't in that role. It's kind of on an individual basis. But where I see the government shutdown really impacting people is more in the long-term impact to, say, Social Security. Right now, Bradford, we've got individuals that are talking about Social Security is going to be reduced in 2031. Right? Because they're saying that the reserve pools are not going to be there at that time. So that's a time out in the future, but let's look at where things are today. If we furlough the government employees, that means they're not being compensated. If they're not being compensated, that means there's no money coming out of those paychecks to go into the Social Security coffers. So a lot of people that are sitting there saying today that they're not impacted by a government shutdown are not actually looking at the fact that those individuals generate a revenue. That revenue is taxed. That money goes into the Social Security coffers, which could potentially impact individuals down the road. That's one way. Also in the local communities, when a person gets a paycheck, doesn't matter if they're a government employee or they just work for, in the private sector of the market. When you look at that, what does a person do with their paycheck? They go out and they buy goods and services, right? So it's your grocery stores, it's your restaurants, it's your local tax, it's the ability to not default on home mortgages, it's to not default on car loans. When we're looking at that, everybody is impacted. Because what happens if individuals start defaulting on car loans? Cars may get repossessed. But also what's going to happen with credit-worthy people no longer able to pay their debt? What's going to happen on interest rates or loan rates that are applied to everybody else? Those companies are going to have to make that back through some other source.
Pass-through?
It's a pass-through.
Okay.
So individuals that might be out there that could have qualified for a 4% or a 5% rate, those businesses are going to raise their rates of what they charge individuals, and that could make it a 6% on the individuals not impacted by it. And I don't know if those numbers, I'm just using that as an example, but no one is isolated from the impact of a government shutdown. Your local communities, like I mentioned, grocery stores, restaurants, if all of a sudden they have less people purchasing goods from them, what are they having to do? They either have to raise their prices, or a lot of times they'll cut employees. If they start cutting employees, now we have a domino effect from the government shutdown now impacting other communities. Government employees may be absorbed in communities where there's not a high concentration. So like the areas that we live in, we may not see a huge impact to that, but there are communities that are built around government agencies where there's a high concentration of them. So those are the things that I would say government shutdowns can impact us. And I think it's something that everybody should be concerned about, because we should be looking at a balance of how our economy works. It should be a balance based upon the market that is out there. And so once one thing gets out of kilter, the domino effect starts happening and impacting other areas.
Because I know in our household, it really hasn't affected us. The mail still shows up.
Sure.
I'm not collecting Social Security yet, so I don't have to file for anything at this point. So I haven't really noticed it.
Sure.
I haven't traveled. I haven't been to the airport, so I haven't been hit by a slowdown from air traffic control.
Sure.
So what you're saying is there's some deeper things going on behind the scenes that it could impact you later.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You may not feel it from a loss of services today, but think of all of the employees that are no longer spending money. So our gross national product is going to be reducing, but as the longer that the furlough is in place or the shutdown is in place, the longer that happens, that's less goods and services. Now, for those individuals that are government employees, more than likely, they're either having to go find other employment opportunities at this time, which would be wonderful if they are able to do that. Mm-hmm. But the other aspect of it is they're having to go to their reserves. They're having to maybe impact their retirement plans early. They're probably having to liquidate their emergency fund. I would hope that most of them over a period of time, if they've worked for the government, has built up that 6-month reserve, because this is a reality at any time that really there's 500 and something individuals in this country that is dictating whether or not they get paid. And that is our Congress and our made up of our House of Representatives and our Senate. So those 512 people, I believe it is, I could be wrong on that number, impacts whether or not they get compensated. So a major thing that those individuals, and it's something that we should all learn from, is that you should have a 6-month reserve built up as an emergency fund, because all of this can be impacted. And the longer that government shutdown goes on, we may see other people in the private practice that may have to start going to their emergency funds as well. So no one is isolated and not impacted when the government is shut down. Behind the scenes are long-term, simply because we have a lack of goods and services being sold or purchased during that time period.
Okay. So another certainty in uncertain times, the T word that's been thrown around a lot, tariffs.
Tariffs. Yeah.
So walk us through how that could impact this as well.
Sure. The mention of the word tariffs immediately makes the market look at uncertainty. And so the market doesn't like uncertainty. It reacts very negatively to that. So when we look at tensions between China, and it's really more of tariffs as it relates to China that we're seeing an impact. So the moment that the current administration mentions tariffs, we see the market kind of backing up, maybe contracting to some degree, or that we have seen of recent. So as we're looking at that, Bradford, the concern is, what if we have an impasse with China and we have a supply chain problem? Okay. All of a sudden, we have a reduction of goods or services that are being produced and sold back into the United States. When that happens, the quality of life is impacted. And much of what individuals look at is, how is my quality of life impacted? We were mentioning earlier in our office, we were need to get some new TVs to go up, or monitors for the office. Well, today, it's convenient. We can go out to one of the big box stores and we can purchase a TV, and that TV may run us somewhere $900. It could be something in the price of $1,000. Let that tariff and tensions between China happen, and all of a sudden we're going to see the price of that TV not stay at $1,000. It could go to $2,000. It could go to $3,000. It could be that it's no longer available simply because the inventory is not there. So tariffs. And I believe the administration is doing a good job on this, because it's more of the elasticity. It's not a hard thing, but we're seeing the stretching of this. But we're also working with U.S.-based companies to say, listen, let's lessen the need or the burden of the tariffs by bringing some of those jobs back to the United States. And I believe Apple is doing a great job with that. We know that their leadership has moved the screens of Apple to be produced at the Corning plant in Kentucky. Now, why is that important? Because it generates jobs in the U.S. that, again, goes back to Social Security. The more jobs generating tax base in the U.S. also creates money going into the coffers of the Social Security. Okay. There's a concern that if in 2031, if Social Security is reduced based upon the numbers they're talking about, and across the board, if we saw benefits reduced by 25%, let's follow the money there. If a retiree, which today, let's say that they've got 33 cents on the dollar of what they're making, is going back out in Medicare premium. It's also going out into maybe a Medicare supplement or a Medicare Advantage plan. We look at their pharmaceutical bill. We look at their maybe copays, any of that that's going just directly into health care related. If Social Security is reduced and all of a sudden that percentage goes from 33% to 50%, how is that going to impact retirees on having disposable income to go out and buy their groceries, pay their property tax, pay these other things, utilities? Those things are dependent upon. So what happens when we're bringing jobs back to the United States? We're broadening on a not vertical, well, vertical is impacted, but on a horizontal base, we're getting a lot more people contributing into Social Security. That now gives us more dollars to allow that coffer to be there, to have a surplus that where we can go out and make those payments that individuals are entitled to. So two things. It's generating money coming in. And for the listeners, let's talk a little bit about what a tariff is. And maybe some people may not know what that is. So a tariff is a product that is generated outside of the United States. And when that product is imported into the United States, that other country is paying a tax for the privilege of selling that product in the United States. So President Trump has gone out and said, we've been at a trade deficit for a long period of time, and it has not been to the favor of the U.S. So we've had all of these U.S.-based companies decide to go and produce their products outside of the United States.
And then bring them back
in. And then bring the product back in at a much lower cost. Now, that creates a large profit margin for that corporation. But what it does is it's stripping the money out of the government programs, i.e. Social Security, impacts Medicare, because, again, those dollars are not going into our Medicare system. They're not going into our Social Security system. But every citizen, as we get to a certain age, is looking to be on one of those government programs, whether it's in your Social Security, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid. But if we're not generating that tax base, we're not going to be able to continue that program providing at that same level of quality. So bringing either they pay a greater amount of taxation to import the product in, or the jobs have to come back to the United States so that we can tax on those and we have those dollars in the future.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You lose the tax ability. You lose the tax dollars, but then you also have the inexpensive goods that Americans crave.
That's right. So quality of life is being traded off for a value in the future, which is our Social Security program, our Medicare, which is our health insurance. The impact of reducing Social Security by 25%, let's just use that as a number, in 2031, that impact is people are going to have to make hard decisions. Do you eat or do you have health insurance? Do you have utilities or do you have pharmaceutical? And that's really not a place that citizens should have to be making that decision, because the economics behind structuring how companies bring products into the U.S., that trade deficit has to be corrected so that it positively impacts the other needed benefits in the future. Okay. And so that's really the crux behind tariffs and the uncertainty that we're seeing in that.
You mentioned the TV example earlier. What are like 4 or 5 products that might be on the going up in price with tariffs that, in your mind, what would you think would be the things to buy now versus later? Well,
the number one thing, and I would tell anybody, if you've got an outdated phone, right now we're seeing the market continue on a bull run based upon the new iPhone 17, Pro 17 being released. We're seeing huge sales through Apple right now, which is giving them the profitability, and Apple being such a large company, the cap weighting of their company is bringing the whole stock market up. So they are they're one of the Magnificent Seven that are positively impacting the marketplace out there today, but it's because of a release of product. If we did have greater tensions with China. Now, the good thing about Apple is I believe it's reducing the tensions with China. I think Apple is doing a great job as being a conduit between the U.S. and being, generating their products in China. They're balancing that out. I think the leadership of Apple is doing a great job in that, being an ambassador for the U.S. because they did bring some of the jobs back. They're bartering on both sides and not just focused on all profitability for the company, in my opinion. So the other side of it is TVs.
Okay.
We look at anything that is technology driven. How many people today are willing to go back to no cell phones? We got a whole generation that lived their whole life
to no cell phone. I'd be totally cool with that.
Yeah. But. Well, we may be of a different era of time, but we have a whole generation out there that have grown up on cell phones, and to go back to not having a cell phone today, and what would be the reasons that would happen? Well, a cell phone today may run you $1,200 for a top-end phone. If all of a sudden we had tensions, we had supply chain problems, we had greater tariffs that ran that up, are we going to be looking at a cell phone going from $1,200 to $2,500? And that would be enough of a just noticeable difference in price that where individuals would not be able to afford it. And that would
be a rapid increase in the price.
It would be a rapid increase, or could be. I have no crystal ball, but it could be a rapid increase, or not having it available at all. And so, again, it's supply and demand. If you want to see the price of something go up very quickly, which is the definition of inflation, have a reduced amount of products to meet the demand out there, and the price is going to dramatically go up. But a lot of the things that we have in our homes that we find to be very convenient, our cell phones, our TVs, microwaves, individuals, how many people today, percentage-wise of the U.S., if they didn't have the ability to use a microwave to warm up food, how many of them would know how to prepare food in the evenings? Right. It would also impact a lot of our restaurants that are out there. All of a sudden, you take a piece of equipment you could buy for $300, and all of a sudden, if that's $1,000, well, that's, that would be, an inflationary adjustment of over, 300% or 200% there. So. I would
assume cars, parts,
cars,
like that.
And that being able to repair a vehicle. We already saw that with the supply chain issues that we saw during COVID. Used cars skyrocketed in value because of supply and demand. Getting parts was nearly impossible because of the supply chain problems. So tensions with other countries has to be very diplomatically handled.
All right, so Michael, thanks for sharing all that. Where can people go to learn more about what you do?
Well, they're always welcome to visit our website. They can go to www.investedinfaith.com, or they're always welcome to call our office just for a discussion. They can call 615-850-6710. Again, 615-850-6710. And these are the things that we're looking at. These are the things that we're keeping a finger on the pulse of what's happening, because that is guidance. It's the tea leaves we're reading to understand how to best manage our clients' accounts and then help try to navigate around these uncertainties.
All right. Oh, well, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Bradford.
All right.
Optivice Advisory Services, LLC, Optivice, is an investment advisory firm registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, under the Investment Advisors Act of 1940. Registration as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The oral and written communications of an advisor provide you with information about which you determine to hire or retain an advisor. For more information, visit https://advisorinfo.sec.gov and search for our firm name. This presentation has been provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as legal or investment advice or a recommendation of any particular security or strategy. The investment strategy and themes discussed herein may be unsuitable for investors depending on their specific investment objectives and financial situation. Information obtained from third-party sources is believed to be reliable, though its accuracy is not guaranteed. Opinions expressed in this commentary reflect subjective judgments of the author based on conditions at the time of publication and are subject to change without notice. Past performance is not indicative of future results.